Hello, my name is Dr. Craig Lamont and I work here at the University of Glasgow on the AHRC funded project, The Collected Works of Allan Ramsay. Today I'll be talking to Professor Murray Pittock, who is the principal investigator on the project and also the general editor of the forthcoming Edinburgh edition of the works of Allan Ramsay. Today we're talking about the special issue of Studies in Scottish Literature, which has been recently published. It's called Allan Ramsay's Future, and it's quite an exciting thing because it allows the team and their collaborators to publish criticism and essays and reflections on Ramsay's place in Scottish literature and, of course, in his future in Scottish literature ahead of the publication schedule for Edinburgh University Press. So a very exciting and monumental role in the history of the project. And today we'll be talking you through that and we'll give you some insights into it. The first question I have for Murray is basically why you think this volume was necessary. Was it because Ramsay had become a relatively neglected figure?
This new volume of Studies in Scottish Literature, looking at Allan Ramsay's potential in the future, is very timely, not only because of the huge international reach of SSL with some over 300,000 downloads since 2005, but because strangely, over the last, indeed, many decades, Ramsay has become rather a neglected figure, despite his immensely important pioneering qualities in the pastoral operetta, in the collection of songs, and particularly in the creation of an intellectual and practical infrastructure for the use of Scots in Scottish writing. So this sense of neglect, which has come over Ramsay in certainly the years since the 1950s, when he was first, for the last time, described as an avatar of Romanticism, is peculiar. But on the other hand, it happens to so many Scottish figures, and indeed has happened to some degree to Burns himself. And I think because it's happened and we lose a lot of the excitement and a lot of the dynamism in these writers. And this is more than ever true in the case of Ramsay, because he's not only an innovator in poetic terms, he's also somebody who is a cultural entrepreneur in the best sense of the word, the founder of the first subscription circulating library in these islands, the developer of Scotland's first national theatre, the developer of Scotland's effectively first art school, or the co-developer of it, the Academy of St. Luke in 1729, and the pioneer of various commercial practices in the theatre world we now take for granted, like season tickets and early bird booking. So there's a huge amount about Ramsay and about the culture that Ramsay helped to sustain, as well as his writing, which we've missed. And in missing that, we've also missed just how influential Ramsay is on Burns. Like many figures who want to avoid actually giving tribute where it's due to their predecessors, Burns chooses to foreground Ferguson more than Ramsay. But any close analysis of Burns's writing will show you that Ramsay, sometimes in subject matter, sometimes in language, sometimes in direct verbal echo, is very close to what Burns has to say.
This special issue features essays by our colleagues on the project, which are the fruits of research for the forthcoming Edinburgh edition. Rona Brown writes on the networks of sociability and the Fair Assembly, which helps inform her view as editor of the poems. Steve Newman, as co-editor of The Gentle Shepherd, offers case studies to view the play as the most major of minor texts in that hybrid thing called 18th century British literature. Brianna Robertson-Kirkland also writes about The Gentle Shepherd in terms of the accompanying music and how the print culture relating to the play changed over the course of the century. Finally, I trace the many sites of memory which claim some sort of connection to The Gentle Shepherd, looking at the battle that takes place over who has the authentic site and who is having us on. Murray, regarding the place of The Gentle Shepherd in Scotland as a physical location, can you tell us something about the development of Ramsay country?
One of the things which the project has done in the last few years is to help to support and develop the Allan Ramsay Festival, now held every year in normal times on the anniversary of Allan Ramsay's birth, or around then, on the 15th of October, the closest weekend to that, in Carlops, in the Allan Ramsay Hotel, named for the poet in the 18th century. And that is because that part of the borders, it's just the borders, just across from Midlothian, that part of the borders has been thought of as Ramsay country for the last 2 centuries at least, because by repute, it was the place where Ramsay set the Gentle Shepherd. And many of the scenes of the Gentle Shepherd can be traced to features of the landscape, to buildings and to farms in that area, and have been so traced for 2 centuries and more. So the Gentle Shepherd, a pastoral ballad opera, an operetta, and really in its 1729 version, is the title with which Ramsay was perhaps most famous in his lifetime, which was performed for the longest after his period after his death. But it also symbolizes something more. It symbolizes the footprint, the cultural footprint of Ramsay, lying beyond Edinburgh, lying beyond the simple world of Scottish poetry, and lying in what is actually in some ways one of the first attempts to create a poet's country, which the area around Carlops was clearly identified as from the very beginning of the 19th century, and which continued to celebrate Ramsay until quite recent times, the 1950s and 60s, and there's been a hiatus since, which I'm glad to say that we've revived. It's tremendous to be able to help local businesses as part of Allan Ramsay's future, as well as bring his poetry and song for the first time in a consistent and scholarly annotated edition to a major audience.
Returning to the special issue, we also have contributions by Jeremy Smith, who serves on the advisory board for the project, looking at the linguistic problems that Ramsay and his collaborator Thomas Ruddiman had to deal with in publishing the Scots language, while Ralph McLean of the National Library of Scotland considers how Ramsay's Scots maintained a link to the classical past and how Latin verse was an important cultural marker in Ramsay's networks. Murray, how important was it to have our advisors and knowledge exchange partners contribute to this volume?
We have an international advisory board that supports the development. And we also have, from the point of view of understanding Ramsay's cultural footprint, a knowledge exchange advisory board who consist of the National Trust for Scotland, who are retheming the new Gladstone's Land capital development with some Ramsay quotes in the bedrooms, thanks to Craig Lamont, who supplied them to the NTS. We also have the National Galleries of Scotland, who are incorporating Ramsay-themed exhibitions in their and hangings in their new Scottish Gallery, which is due to be finished in 2023. And we have the National Library of Scotland, who hosted a significant Ramsay exhibition last year for a month physically, but it's available virtually, obviously having been affected by the current pandemic. So all of those knowledge exchange partners have very much pulled their weight, and it's tremendous that we have this enormous support from South Carolina and from Patrick Scott and his colleagues, who have done so much to support Scottish poetry and the manuscript research, the primary research supporting Scottish poetry and modern Scottish poetry editions from Ramsay to Burns and beyond in the last 20 years, 30 years, in fact, including the James Hogg edition. So a big thank you to Patrick and Tony and their colleagues at the University of South Carolina, and welcome a view into Allan Ramsay's future with Studies for Scottish Literature's special edition on Allan. Thank you.